When you admit you're powerless over it, you get all the power in the world, because now you're asking for something greater, more divine, more powerful to help in that behavior, right? And when you truly admit, I can't do this on my own, so you have a coach, and now you have a spiritual practice, and it's not going to be perfect overnight. Sometimes it is, actually. I shouldn't say that. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there are these miraculous spiritual revolutions, but and you have somebody to share it with, right? Which is really, really important. I never want my clients or the people I work with to feel like they're living up to my standards on anything. I'm there for them. So when you share something, you cut it in half. Now both of us are holding it. We're holding it together. These are the practices that it takes. And it's what my job is not to just make it entertaining, not just to make it educational, but also to make it enjoyable. My clients and the people I work with, the groups I work with, should have a good time. This should not be a punishment. This is not a punishment. This is a gift. This is an opportunity, and okay, so we don't get it perfect round 1, round 2, round 3, but you keep going.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Adam Joblin, who is a celebrity that we're going to be hearing from more from his origin story. Before we do that, I want to just make it clear for everybody here listening. And I have a free online resource that you want to check out below, helping you know how to go from building an audience. If you're a leader and you're wanting to start or scale your audience, make sure to check out that training. That's going to really help you. It's my gift to you. I want to really be able to help as many leaders out there really build an online presence as much as they can so they get more leads and revenue. Check that resource down below. Adam, I'm super pumped to have you on here. Before I do anything, I want to ask a question that I ask everybody here on the podcast is, what is high performance? What does that look like to you? What have you seen in all the celebrities and amazing people that you've been able to coach? What have you been able to see that really kind of defines what that looks like?
For me, my definition and what I do with my clients, groups, whomever I'm working with, is high performance is going to look different every day, but it's repetition. It's repetition. So even if that day really means a prayer, a meditation, and a workout, as long as you get your essentials in, as you build one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, these skills and these commitments compound over time. So you don't want to be so nitty gritty where you're high performance, low performance, high performance. It's just about truly being committed every single day. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. You don't have to have a 5:30 workout. You don't have to have a sauna. You don't have to have a cold plunge. These things are all wonderful, wonderful modalities, right? But as long as you stick to your commitments and keep your eye on the ball, your eye on the vision, you will get to where you're going.
I love that. Because that's so important. I think we're our worst enemy when it comes to like high performance and everything. And I can imagine the people that you work with are high elites people, athletes, celebrities, all sorts of people across every gamut of life. And they're all just 2 inches away from like failure and collapse, and it's all in their head. It's a mental game with everything. But tell us about like what you do, how you serve people, a little bit clearer.
Sure. The name of my company is called The Hero Project. So the foundation of what I do is I'm taking through every single client through their hero's journey, bringing in 12-step principles for recovery, bringing in health and wellness principles, bringing in spiritual and biblical practices, bringing in the road less traveled, be it entrepreneurship, or you want to start your podcast, or you're an athlete but you want to write your book, but going into the unknown and really bringing it all together in a holistic way. So the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions, right? The success, but also more importantly, the fulfillment, and bringing that into one place where we're like this. So as much as my clients are accountable to me, believe it or not, I actually believe that I'm even more accountable to them.
I think I want to touch on some of these topics and principles and habits, because I got a lot of questions for you of like how you do all of this. Because as a high performer myself, and many of the people that listen to here, it's like growth is on our mindset. It's like, how can I do more, less effort, and then just like it grow, expand, height, width, whatever it might take. But bring us back to the very beginning, like where this all began, because you've been on this journey all your life. You have some kids, you're on this journey. You help all these people do this. Like, what's this look like? Where did this all begin? Where was that line in the sand moment?
Well, look, it's a different day and age right now. It's a different era.
Hmm.
I Where it all began, and then I'll give you the line in the sand. Where it all really began was the way I was as a kid. I was the fat kid. I was the heavy kid. My dad called me El Chubbo. I grew up in the '80s. There was a movie called the movie called The Goonies, where this kid Chunk would do the Chunk Shuffle, and I just hated the way I looked, which gave me a very class clown, charismatic, open, personality and energy, because the idea was to have people like you and to have them laugh with you and not laugh at you. But with that empathy and with that sympathy that I always had for others, I was somebody that was a kind of a naturally born, a natural born coach. So when we moved down to Florida and I was probably 11 years old, 4 short years, I went from being the fattest kid in the class to the best built kid in the class.
Mm.
I went from people going, "Hey man, how many Oreos did you eat last night?" to, "Yo man, how much can you bench press?"
Mm.
The girls liked me. So everything on the external changed except me. Everything on the external. Um, and now having the muscles and having the charisma and having more coordination in my body, I was able to hang out and play with the older kids. And two things came with that. One was I was the guy that if I was in football, I wrapped you up properly. You know what I mean? And my coach would like yell at me, "Joblin, lay him out." And you know what I mean? And if we were boxing, I would always show you what I did after. As in, there was something in me that always wanted to bring the best out in somebody
Mm.
else. And just so you know, for a guy from Jersey, growing up in the 80s and 90s, that felt very feminine, very, very feminine. That I was not the guy that was going to lay you out. That I was, that I always wanted to help.
Mm.
That I always wanted to make somebody better. It felt very so. I was like naturally born to do this. Now, going back to that, now hanging out with the older kids, with the muscles and the charisma, I'll just never forget it. But there was a day where they were passing the alcohol and they were passing whatever they were passing, and I drank it, and it fixed something inside of me I did not know was broken, Nathan. Because I was so disassociated.
Mm.
It fixed up, and all of a sudden, I remember actually like looking at my body, being like, "Whoa!" You know what I mean? And all of that worry and that anxiety, that fear went all the way down. That fat kid went, and this guy, and Superman came out, and I wasn't arrogant, and I wasn't cocky. I was just confident,
Mm.
and I did everything I could to chase that feeling. I was the first kid in my high school with a fake driver's license. I went to Arizona State University because it was the #1 party school in Playboy and Penthouse magazine, which it was. And I dominated there. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that line that we're talking about of where this whole thing happened is in July 14th, 2006, where I had crossed many lines and things were not bad habits anymore and things were not unhealthy dependencies anymore. But I was a full blown alcoholic and addict and I had to get sober. And on that journey to getting clean and sober, obviously, I had to learn a lot of hard, painful life lessons because I had to let go of an old version of me. I had to let a version of me die.
Yeah.
But a new version of me was born. And I did not know all these gifts and skills and talents that I had locked up inside of me. I had no idea. And that transformation is what unleashed me to do now what I'm doing.
Dude, what a story. And were you married at that time?
I was.
That's not easy
I
to
was.
transform with a partner at that point.
No, no. I'll never forget, and there's a lot of stories I could share from what happened to me in rehab and my true spiritual awakening and, where I found God. And, these stories are I could talk about them all
Yeah.
day. But I'll never forget when it was a 28-day treatment center. I went to the Hanley Center, and I'll never forget day 29 when I came home. And you got to remember, she hasn't seen me in about a month, and then she comes into the bedroom and she sees me, praying, asking for protection and love and guidance and thanking God for another day of sobriety. And she sees me on my knees and my hand, and she's like, "Oh, great! Now you're this. 1 minute you're crazy on Patron tequila, whacked out on pills, and a maniac, and now you're this guy,
Mm.
right?" But I stayed with it, and she saw me doing that morning and night and morning and night. I'll never forget. About 6, 7 months later, we knew a family, and their daughter got really, really ill, and she came home. She was shooken up by the news. It wasn't good. And I remember she asked me, could I pray for this little girl? And I said to her, babe, you can pray too. Like I don't own that relationship. Like you can pray too. And she goes, yeah, I understand, but it's working for you.
Mm. She saw the
Right. And
transformation in you that
we saw it. She saw. So remember we were saying about high performance? High performance to each person is extremely
yeah.
different. Sometimes it's just those little things that you're doing every single day that shift everything. Everything. And it's just people watching, noticing how you act, how you think, how you conduct yourself, you use your words, your languaging, how you treat others. People are watching every day. They're not going to take it in the first time.
Yeah.
They're not going to take it in the 15th time. But over time, people will see this transformation, even if it's just a prayer.
And now you've been on tons of stages. You're a speaker, you're an author, you have your program, you've been coaching people, you've shared stages with Tony Robbins, it sounds like. You've done tons of different connections with people, your celebrities, athletes, all these people. How did that all start there?
Hey, I really was completely unconventional in this thing, and I don't suggest it. But in 2020, when there's a prior life to me where I was third generation in a family business that was like an empire, and it's part of my background. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of my grandfather. I'm extremely proud of my father, and I had to live up to these two big
Mm.
shadows, and that fueled my alcoholism
Mm.
addiction, by the way. But in 2020, when all this was happening, I remember looking at my mentor. We have a book out now; it just came out the other day. His name Dion, the rock and roll philosopher, but like he's my mentor, rock and roll Hall of Fame legend. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And he's like, what do you mean? You're finally going to be Adam Jablin. You're finally going to bring people to a higher reality. You're going to be you. And I was there with 3 credit cards, in my own name for the first time, and didn't know how to do any of this. Didn't have and I just started gambling on myself and betting on myself and putting my best effort, and believed in social media and saw that's a place to get credibility for what you do. Within my work, I started being asked to be on talk shows and you know ESPN and Fox News and CNN, and and COVID was happening, and the pandemic, so people were drinking and using drugs more, um and I just kept failing forward,
Mm.
Nathan. I just kept, I knew I had something to give to the world. And also, it may be a little bit about significance or ego, but I knew I had something to say.
Mm.
I knew I had something to say. And it hasn't been easy. The entrepreneurial journey is not easy. It still is not easy, if I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. But I just kept trying, I didn't let anything stop me. Or, I mean, trust me, I had probably my own pity potties for a little bit, or how come this isn't working, or this isn't going well. But I just kept putting my next foot forward, and going to seminars and getting in the rooms, and not tons of them in the beginning. Everyone, I hear all the time, like, proximity is power. Well, sometimes, but proximity can also just be a selfie.
Mm.
Not necessarily. I believe power is from here.
Yeah.
It's with the divine.
Yeah.
But what is power is at least putting yourself in the position to to acquire that knowledge, to meet certain people, to take specific actions, and then have the courage to keep going, to keep moving forward. And my accountability with my recovery, and my accountability in my family business, and my accountability for my fitness journey kept me to be somebody that, if I said I'm going to be somewhere, I was there. And if I said I was going to do something, I was going to do something. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people that treat even this, what we're doing now, like, well, it's a podcast, and if I need to cancel, I'll just cancel. Like, well, no, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You show up. And I really believe if you keep that mindset and you do these actions every single day, your destiny will meet you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's an alignment of the character and identity right there. Right. And I think so many people get lost in like obsession with more and not obsession with formulating the identity that you and I have with our faith with our creator. Because if we really define that, then everything else is just a plus and bonus. And when God's first commandment was to create, it allows us to express that by working hard on those different crafts to, grow and expand, and having that internal wiring to want to get our message out and to help people. Like, I think that's a key part that comes from God too, is the wiring of like wanting to help people. Like, I don't see a giraffe wanting to go help another giraffe out. you know, it's like it's internally wired because we're soulish beings from God. That I think that comes from that. Um, with the clients that you serve right now, like many people just need to like, hey, something's broken, or I can't find a way out, or I need some strong accountability. What, like with your expertise and your experience, bring us kind of like the seven planning things that you do to help people, or the seven traits or the seven things that you take things through, because people have the the AA thing with 12-step program. Yours is a little bit different. Like, bring us through that.
And by the way, I'm also very proud of being a member of a 12-step
Okay.
fellowship, which is, again, a foundation that I keep very near and dear to my heart. But coaching is different. Coaching is extremely different because, coach is supposed to get you to your goals as fast and as easy and as enjoyable as possible, right? That a coach is there to help you along that way, and it's very
Mm.
interactive. A mentor, a mentor is kind of like Dion to me, or let's say Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant. A mentor is not going to get that involved in your everyday decisions, but is going to let you be around them and just pick up on the secret sauce. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant never passed the ball together, never played on the same team, never. But it was Kobe being around Michael and picking his brain and just seeing how he lived,
Yeah.
how he conducted himself, how he practiced, how he ate, and it was, so you just get the secret sauce. He wasn't coaching Kobe. And then let's say like a teacher from, coach, a mentor, a teacher is going to teach you to get the right answers, what I mean, to get to that next level. But they're not so engaged
Mm-hmm.
in that daily grind so there's a lot of different practices that I have with my clients. And a lot of it's and from the beginning is, I'm never going to ask them to do something that I don't do myself. But from the very beginning, you could look at it even through the hero's journey, flow, or strategy. But in the beginning, I need to separate them from the pain, separate them from the old story, separate them from the alcoholism, the addiction, the obsessive compulsive. We have to have a separation.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, we also have to build a common language. Like Nathan, it's extremely like if you and I were together right off the bat, our common language is going to be our faith, right? What we believe God is, who we believe God is, and our
Mm-hmm.
families. But if you're meeting somebody and they're not even into that, but they're these huge New England Patriot fans, you got to understand to speak to them in their language and bring up Tom Brady and bring up Bill Belichick and bring up the things that's going to open their mind up so they can have aha
Yeah.
moments. And then within that, we're going to have, as we go down that journey, There's going to be an awareness. There's going to be an admission of where they're powerless, but also where the power really is. You're going to find a mission statement, how they're going to live every day. You know what I mean? What their purpose is. We're going to build accountable actions, simple things that you can actually check off that list every single day to build and to grow. You know what I mean? We're going to overcome some hurdles, overcome some old stories, overcome some old negative beliefs, you know what I mean, which I still have to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean, we're going to keep refining that foundation, keep refining those basics, but still, as we go around that journey, we're going to just look and explore in certain things. An example would be even love languages when I have partners that are married.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wish those love languages are around when I was married. You know, my former wife, her love language was acts of service. You know, my love languages was words of affirmation and touch, and we couldn't communicate.
Mm.
So for some reason, when I took the garbage out, or if I did something in the garden, she thought I was the sexiest guy in the world. Or changing the light bulb. But I hated doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And I would always tell her how beautiful she is, and I touch her all the time. And she wasn't wired like that. So I was trying to give her my love languages. You know, I was trying to, so we're going to go over love
Mm-hmm.
languages. You know, we're going to go over different energy states. You know what I mean? And you could break that down from, you know, you can make it really normal and just say, you know, abundance of energy, or, you know, from feelings, or you could even go into masculine, feminine, and where are you? You know, but we're going to go through all of these, if you want to call them these lessons, these hurdles that we're going to jump together, right? And it's designed in a system where I'm really catered to the client.
Yeah.
You know, we are going to face some of the old fears. We're actually going to repair some of the old relationships, because a lot of people, what happens is old stories and old things will happen, and they'll bring up stuff that happened with their parents, or their kids they had from a different marriage, or their exes, and these relationships actually have to be repaired. And when I say repaired, I don't mean harmony, right? But there has to be a certain amount of accountability in which you're willing to admit your part, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and admit where you were wrong and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Not for the other person, because that frees them. Now they're free. They're not holding on to that I mean, trust me, it's always in the back of their minds. It's always in the back of their minds.
Mm.
That's why it's finally coming up. So these are some of the essentials that we go through. And by the way, as much as I love the health, the wellness, the body, because the body is the vessel, and it can look good, and it can look sharp, it can be a point of attraction, and it's gonna help you in every area. It's gonna bring your energy up. You're gonna thrive. But no matter what, when we got to get some spiritual principles down, even if you're not a believer.
Sure.
In God, and you need to say the universe, you need to say divine, you need to say invisible forces. But I always show them, like when I was growing up, this is some Buck Rogers Star Wars nonsense. You know what I mean? The fact that we can FaceTime and the stuff that and there are whales speaking underneath the ocean right now, and there are pilots flying right now, and they're not even looking where they're going. They're just using solar. You know what I mean? And there are dog whistles happening right now that you can't hear. So to realize that there's so much energy around you that you can't understand,
Mm-hmm.
but you can learn.
Yeah.
You can learn.
And let me bring up,
and as you go deeper, you know, you're really helping them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially. It becomes the whole person.
yeah. And I love that you touch on that, because when we're talking about addiction, it's not just with alcohol that people have challenges. That's what your coined term is. Everybody has addictions, and everybody has vices, especially high performers like us, is we take things to extremes. And so we're obsessed about things, but we also need to have like some downtime to kind of like chill and relax. And I think we get caught up with getting things that make us feel good and everything like that. As a high performer yourself and coaching people through it, how important is this, not necessarily to say cut out, but to replace? Like, what are some things that we can practically do for people? Because I think if we looked at the statistics of people during COVID, like pornography went through the roof of watch time, alcohol, drug, I mean, just everything skyrocketed with binge watching and addiction, and people are coming off of those things now, maybe coming out of COVID after a few years and truly trying to like recircle the wagons and trying to address some things. And it's hurt them more than helped them. And so talk to us a little bit about that. What are some tactics or things that we can look at to kind of readdress them, some things, get clear? Is it replacing things? Is it cold turkey with things? Like, how would you go about helping people address that?
I definitely believe in replacing,
Okay.
right? Like even with me. So let me just use me as the test dummy. Alcoholism and addiction is spiritual. It's a spiritual malady, right? It's a spiritual disease, right? So I need, if I have a spiritual disease, dis-ease, right? And it's been shown now, like alcoholism addiction is a
That's why
disease.
they call it spirits.
It's like it's
Right.
right, all right. So they showed it. It's progressive, right? It's chronic, right? So it's progressive. It gets worse over time. It's chronic. It's always there. It's primary, not secondary, right? So secondary would be I drove my car into the wall and then I had a drink. Primary would be I had a few drinks, then I drove my car into the wall, right? And it's fatal. Those four qualifications are a medical disease. You take one of them away, it's a disorder, and that's bad enough, right? So you have to replace that with a spiritual solution, right? So with every client, you do have to replace it. And that's where that common language comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I need them to replace it with things that are going to fulfill them, not fulfill me, which means we're going to have to get uncomfortable. Because if you wanted to always learn to play guitar, or if you really want to paint or draw something, or we're going to have to do things that you haven't done. And we're going to have to be a kid again. We're going to have to be a kid and not judge ourselves. And it's going to be okay to make mistakes. And it's going to be okay to be really, really uneasy and uncomfortable. But, once you do these things 2 or 3 times, they start becoming fun.
Yeah.
These things start becoming fun. And it's a word that's really frowned on nowadays because we're all so driven and grit and grind and get there. But you do become more well balanced.
Yeah. There's a book that's out. It's called Hypomania, and they paint pictures of like the obsessive people throughout history that came to America to make America great. And they give a bunch of history lessons about some great people that accomplished much, and they were on verge of like being a maniac, but it actually drove in such a positive way the benefits of everything. And that's why when I look at myself and I try to compare myself with others, of like, hey, I'm driven, I'm wired so much differently than other people. Maybe it's the upbringing, maybe it's some tragedy that beheld people with things. Like I was talking with someone on a podcast not too long ago, and they were wired by this because their parents had nothing. They came immigrants, poverty, they saw the wealth and wanted to change that for them. We're talking about Tony Robbins. He had that, experience too, where he had nothing and said, I'm not going to allow that to happen again. Like many times it's shaped people with a lack of things, but it's also helped create some healthy things and some obsessiveness. Now, when we're talking about addictions, it could be even addictions to work. I think there's a workaholism that can be that because we don't want those things not to happen. Addictions with, drugs, alcohol, could be, pornography with that. But there needs to be, and I remember studying this, and I want to get your thoughts on this with your expertise of this. There was a study called the Blue Zones where they researched everywhere on the planet where people lived to over 100. So centurions, right? And they came up with, and I forget the guy's name, but it was also National Geographic that went out and did all these studies. And they found that one of the traits, the 9 things that they came up with people that lived the longest, is that they were able to downshift. They were able to downshift. And being obsessive personality types like we are, it's very hard to do that. Or even finding time to do those things, or finding priorities for our family and our friends and the things that are important. I've tried to create some strong boundaries to kind of help me stay aligned with those priorities. But what would you suggest or help people with those tendencies to lean sort of like obsession or, relentless towards specific goals to create not imbalance, but balance so that those vices don't pop up with really strong tendencies that they've been trying to harness all these years with maybe sobriety or, those temptations that come up.
What I usually do is I have them pick somebody they really, really love the most, right? So if you don't have kids, it could be your wife, or it could be your children, or it could be your husband, or it could be your mother. And I want them to write a letter to them, 20 years from now, but they continue behaving exactly like this, driven, obsessive, compulsive, and everything that they missed. And I want them to form a letter in which where the relationship is today.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want them to write a second letter when they got everything prioritized, and how delicious and wonderful that relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
So they can actually feel it 20 years from now and they continue this, or 20 years from now and they slow it down. And because look, you will experience everything, and I mean everything, from what you're doing with your company, what you're doing in your mission, what you're doing in financially, or how you're doing emotionally. You will experience all of that within your relationships. Eventually you and you are going to get really, really, really bored. So that's how I have them really take a look at what are things going to look like 20 years from now. Truly. So let's say you obtain every goal. You just kept checking them off the list, right? But who's going to want to celebrate with you 20 years from now? Who's going to want a part of that?
Right.
Who's going to want to be on your yacht and your jet and your this and your that? You don't have anybody with you. Right? So really, slowing down, there are seasons to slow down. There are times to slow down. I am somebody that's as driven as you are, but if I don't take those times to really take a look at myself, take a look at where I'm at, know when it's time to go from fifth gear into fourth gear into third gear, know when it's time to put fuel in the tank, I will burn myself out and I will lose everything that's important.
Yeah. How have you prioritized that? Is that just by being dedicated to a calendar, have an assistant, or what are some things that you've done to like anchor in tactically some of those things that you prioritize?
Well, first off, I want to make sure everyone knows I don't get it right all the time, but for me, it really is my faith, and understanding that this time with my son bodybuilding in the gym is more important than these 2 extra clients, or this time. And by the way, and sometimes it's vice versa. And sometimes it's saying, it's time for me to go out there and do my thing. Okay. And make sure, the people I love this is how I put food on the table. So it's really the wisdom, in the serenity prayer, right? God, grant me this serenity, the peace of mind. You understand? To accept the things I cannot change. Well, I can't change I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I can't change how the world is. I can't change, the 24-hour acts. If you go accept the things right? The courage to change the things I can. Well, the courage, what can I change right now? Where am I overdoing it? Where am I underdoing it? Right? But most importantly, the wisdom to know the difference. Sometimes there is a season for yes. Sometimes it's a season to say yes to every single opportunity that's in front of you. And sometimes it's a season to say, I can't do that. No. So again, if that's having an assistant, or if that's trusting somebody within your company, or it's a matter of really being aware of where you are, taking a snapshot, and having the wisdom to know where you are, where you want to be, and how you want it to look.
Yeah.
That's the main thing with my coaching too, with people, or my mentorships, or what I do. How do you want this to look? Because if it's just an MTV video and it's just you on the party, if it's just an Instagram reel, if it's just a TikTok, if that's how you want your life to look, you're going to be really disappointed
Mm.
because you're substituting what life is really about with either wealth, power, pleasure, or honor. I'm the man, and there's nothing wrong with those things when they are in the right house, when they are done properly.
Yeah. I've tried to find, like, for me, like, as I learn more about myself, and maybe our listeners will like this too. It's like, you've heard of like the mission, vision, and values, but like trying to get clarity of like who you are from like personality tests to kind of hone in some different qualities and characteristics that you have. And then there's the alignment with your identity with God, but also the values that you hold that gives the filter toward making decisions. And some of the things in my life, like you try to give and take with some extremes, like, hey, can I be okay with just a glass of wine? Could I be okay with, doing this, that, and the other, right? And I've had to kind of formulate boundaries of like myself, like, hey, I know that I'll get realigned, or if like I had a binge or I go to that type of party or that type of atmosphere, that it's not going to help me on my high performance journey. It's going to set me back for days, right? Or you're on a fitness transformation, and like myself, I'm on Project Visible Abs, and I go on the weekend with my family and we go on some stuff, and I can't be completely compliant with my meal plan. I weigh in and I'm 4 pounds heavier. I mean, of course, this granted could be like water weight, with some of this stuff, but now I get down on myself. Right. And I realize it's like, okay, it's a mental game, but it's also like setting up boundaries of realizing, hey, how far can I go that realigns some everything? So that I really kind of anchor in the identity shift of like, if someone asks me, you want a cigarette? It's like, I'm trying to quit, and I'm like, no, I'm not a smoker. And it's almost an identity shift that anchors in. And I'm wondering with sobriety, and these vices, it's like, how much of that is like the core identity? It's like for people that are struggling with, alcohol or pornography, it's like when they see it, they're not then just staring like they normally have done, but like covering their eyes, like Job in the Bible talks about. Like there's a core element of identity shift that needs to take place. Like, how do you go about that with your clients, or how have you been able to kind of harness that?
Well, let's talk about those things that you brought up. Okay. Let's not talk about going on a trip with your kids and your wife, and you decide to go off your meal plan a couple of days because 3 or 4 days back on your nutrition plan, you'll dial that right back
Yeah.
in, and you want to be able to enjoy special moments. You really, really do. But then you brought up more of the hardcore stuff, right? You have to take a look at how it's really affecting your life, the shame, the guilt, the amount of time you put to it, the amount of times you obsess about it, and we write this out, and what it's really costing you. Even with certain people, how much money is going towards that vice? Truly, how much money is going
Mm.
towards that vice? Because you're not adding it up every day, and you're not adding it up every month. And when you see it, what happens in a year, you get astonished.
Mm.
You get astonished, and admitting, and maybe for the first time, that you're powerless over it, right? When you admit you're powerless over it, you get all the power in the world, because now you're asking for something greater, more divine, more powerful, to help in that behavior, right? And when you truly admit, I can't do this on my own, so you have a coach, and now you have a spiritual practice, and it's not going to be perfect overnight. Sometimes it is, actually. I shouldn't say that. Sometimes it is.
Mm.
Sometimes there are these miraculous spiritual revolutions, but and you have somebody to share it with, right? Which is really, really important. I never want my clients or the people I work with to feel like they're living up to my standards on anything. I'm there for them. So when you share something, you cut it in half. Now both of us are holding it. We're holding it together. These are the practices that it takes. And it's what my job is not to just make it entertaining, not just to make it educational, but also to make it enjoyable. My clients and the people I work with and the groups I work with should have a good time, man. You know, this should not be a punishment. This is not a punishment. This is a gift. This is an opportunity, you know? And okay, so we don't get it perfect round one, round two, round three, but you keep going,
Mm.
you keep going. It's having the courage to take the deep dives into places that are within you anyway, but you really haven't looked at.
Yeah.
And doing it with somebody that's going to make you feel safe. Because one thing I can say is there's not one thing my clients have done that I haven't done.
Mm. And I like your topic about failing forward. I think that's a big part about everybody too. Is I think people get in this whirlwind of shame and guilt, and they go backwards more than they go forwards. It's like like if I'm drinking and then I feel shame when I'm not doing it, or I did do it and I want more, so I can cover up that shit, and then it just becomes this spiral of like implosion. But it's like failing forward. It's like not being in your head saying, "All right, better every day, getting stronger
Yeah.
every day." I think that's the resiliency that is needed for the hard things in life. Right.
Even with
Yeah.
mistakes. You know, Nathan, that's a part that people really need to take a look at. You know, there's, especially in this new era with social media, YouTube, constant educational videos, that, you know, there's that comparison value. You know, and you're watching somebody so far developed, you don't even know what their journey is. And when you get to hear what it was really like for them, it was never this straight beautiful line
Mm.
ever. It was you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're watching all of those years of development into that human being now and trying to pass that knowledge back to you. So you got to take that as appreciation and not comparison.
Yeah. That's so good, man. Let me ask you some personal things. With fitness is a big key component for you. Like you're jacked. If
Yeah.
you're listening to this, you know, when you think of Adam, you just think of like this strong Superman type of guy. Your faith is important to you. Your family's important to you. Is there anything that you carry around with you that's unique every day that you bring or wear or have? Or what's your everyday carry look like?
Anything that I bring around that's unique, as in that I could share with the audience for what I
Yeah.
do.
Or just in general, personally.
Yeah, well, I think the main thing, I've never been able to put it in a bottle or give it. I wish I could. I wish I could also teach it. Is although when I work with somebody, they do pick up on it and then they start embodying it themselves. Or when I work with groups, is, you know, I have an infectious enthusiasm for life
Mm,
and I have an infectious enthusiasm for connection. I love it.
yeah.
I love it. You know, it is where I feel my best. It's where I feel my best. And when we're together within that space is where I feel God,
Mm,
is where I feel connection, is where I feel divine forces. Because I really only want the best for that person. I really, really do. So something that I carry with me, which, you know, is, you know, and anytime somebody meets me, is this joy for living. Is this joy for living. And it doesn't mean I have it all the time, every time. You know, bro, I mean, if you lived in my head, you would know, oh, this guy has doubts. This guy has fears. It doesn't mean I don't continue to move forward. Doesn't mean I don't continue to move forward. But of course, I'm human,
mm,
you know, and my human brain wants to keep me safe. And my human brain wants to get me from point A to B as fast as possible and never stop and smell the roses. But it's a journey. It's really a journey. And within that journey, there's going to be highs, lows, sunshine and rainbows, rain and hailstorms. But I can feel at peace through all of it. And when I'm connecting with somebody, that's what they feed off of. They feed off this enthusiasm and energy that I have for life. For
I love
life.
that. Because I think a lot of people have a seriousness about them. I get trapped in that sometimes, and have a more of a, you know, tenacity to say, hey, live life, have a good time, you know, enjoy the present is not always easy. but it's important.
Oh, dude, I call that Jersey. I have Jersey come out. You know what I mean? I have Jersey come out where it's competitive and ruthless and attack mode and it's a part of me that I can call on when needed rather than not control it and it comes out and dominates. There's a time and a place to call the empathetic side of me, the sensitive side of me, the killer inside of me. You know what I mean? The king, the romantic side of me, the majestic, magical part of me. And my job is to know when to call these parts out and at what time. Because if I bring the romantic side out when it's time to be kill or be killed, that ain't going to work.
Right.
But again, when it's time to have a real moment and have something sweet in my life and I let Jersey come out, that's going to ruin that moment.
Yeah.
Right. So when you can learn how to control these parts within you and not let them, you control them and them not control you, that's power.
I love that.
That's power.
And you have a 7-day challenge that you help people with. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can connect with you further.
Yeah. So I have the free Hero 7 challenge, right? Which is, it's fun, right? They're very quick videos. Go onto adamjoblin.com, sign up for the Hero 7. And what it does is it builds on a practice every single day, just a practice, and I'm there with you in video form. You know what I mean? And we're talking about a prayer, a meditation, a 10-minute walk. I don't want to give the whole thing away, but these little, when you can do this for 7 days straight, and you're like, why the hell do I feel so much better? Why? I mean, it's the same thing as like when I first started doing a cold plunge. I hate it. I still hate it. You know what I mean? And I'm not somebody that does it every single day, right? But I try to go a few times a week, and I hate, right? But the effects after, why do I feel so much better?
Yeah.
Right. So when you can give somebody something very practical that they can do every day, very practical, reaching out to another person, these things are what life is all about.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, but even before social media, but right now life is all about the real, the like, the news, the look, the image, and we're losing that connection. We're losing to what's really, really important.
Yeah. And I'll put those links down in the show notes. Make sure to go check out Adam on his website, and his Instagram is huge. He posts a lot of content there. That's going to be a great way to connect with him further. And if you're wanting to take a leap in the audience here of wanting to build an online audience and wanting to learn how to do more leads and revenue and expand what you're doing, make sure to check out that training video down below. I'm going to give that to you guys away for you so that you guys can really grow and expand. Adam, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And until next time, we will see you on the next episode.